In the beginning, I asked everybody to identify themselves if they had served in the Armed Forces of America. Most people don't think they're a veteran. And if I may take advantage of that gentleman in the back, he says he served stateside, he doesn't think he's a veteran. So if you raised your right hand and you swore to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and so on, the way that reads, you are a veteran. Because some people get hurt on day one, some people only serve in the reserves or National Guard, some people served only in the WACs, the WAVES, the WASPs. All those folks, all those ladies who served during World War II, they're all veterans. Anybody who served for the Armed Forces of America is a veteran. So let's go ahead and, now as you'll see, different time periods qualify for different benefits, and I'll kind of explain those as I go. Currently, everyone who's a senior who served during World War II or Korea, everything applies to them. It's the younger veterans, myself included. I served during Desert Storm. I no longer have medical because that expired. I can no longer get some benefits. I can get some, and I'm a senior citizen, but I can't get them now. But that's not the case for everybody sitting in this room who's a veteran, all right? So basically we're here to talk about understanding what the VA is about. So there are 3 divisions of the VA. Most people don't realize that. They think if I just go to the VA hospital, I can get everything I need there. That's not the case. The Veterans Hospitals are only one division of the Veterans Administration. It's called the Veterans Health Administration. That's the hospitals and the clinics. And that includes the outreach folks who go out to our homeless veterans and outreach to them, and those who do field visits. Everything that has to do with medical treatment is the Veterans Hospital Administration. Then there's another organization, which I'm going to focus most of my time on tonight, is the Veteran Benefit Administration. That's the organization in the Veterans Affairs that actually deals with pensions for both the veterans and survivor spouses. And then the third division is our National Cemetery Administration. The National Cemetery Administration takes care of all our national cemeteries. They oversee the operation of them. They allow veterans to be buried there. They maintain them. They provide not only the grave plot and the grave marker, which we'll get into, and they maintain that. So that's the third division of the VA. And I want you to know something, and not to despair the VA, those 3 agencies don't know each other. They don't even talk to each other. They've heard of each other. They know they exist, but they don't know anything about each other. And that, I don't know why it's the case, but that's something you should know. So if you go to your doctor and you say, hey doc, I'm interested in filling out some information about a pension, the doctor's going to scratch his head. Unless he's giving you a service disability waiver or a sign off on a service disability injury, the doctor doesn't know anything about the benefit administration. And if you say to the doctor, well, I want to make sure that in my future planning I'll be buried in a national cemetery, the doctor's not going to know where that is. He's heard of them. Yeah, there's one down the street, I think, but I don't know how to get a hold of them. So that's why it's important to understand that there's the 3 divisions. And I want to read this little line. I think this is really important because it was said by a very wise man a very long time ago. Before that, I'm going to go this. Our service members and veterans have sacrificed to keep our country and everything it represents safe. We honor and serve those men and women who, by fulfilling President Lincoln's promise, these are the wise words, to care for him who have borne the battle, and for his widow, and for his orphan. That is what the VA was founded on in 1935. And if you want to thank anybody, thank the American Legion, because they're the reason the Veterans Administration exists today. They lobbied Congress for almost 20 years, well, about 18 years to get that to happen. So let's talk about the hospital administration. Now, as you'll see on page 4, if you're going to follow that way, or you can just listen, the hospital administration works different for veterans at different age levels, meaning different service periods. But again, for the purposes of everyone in this room, if you needed to go to the VA hospital, you only need to enroll. That's all you need to do. And I have the forms here. If you're not enrolled in the Veterans Administration for any reason, there is one form. It's called the 1010EZ. We'll talk about that in a minute. I've got the forms. You can fill it out and submit it with your DD-214, and you're in. And then at least you'll know you'll be in their system. They cover preventative care maintenance. They do inpatient care. I'm not going to go into these details, but you have them available to you. They do the ancillary services. And there was a lady in the back who said she's got TRICARE, but it doesn't cover dental. If you look on page 7, under ancillary services, you'll see it says dental. So you can see a dentist, but you need to see him in a VA hospital, not at Kaiser, not your private practicing physician. You'd have to go to a Veterans Administration hospital or clinic, wherever that dentist is working, and then that dentist could give you some treatment. Alrighty, so let's go on to, and also the pharmacy, that could be a big thing. Most senior citizens cannot afford their medications. If you're a veteran and you need medications, you should be using the VA healthcare system so you can look at maybe getting some of those prescription medications. Now, they do have a copay system in the VA, but as you get older, the copays drop. At senior citizen level, at 67 and over, there are no copays, unless, of course, you have a large amount of wealth, and then they might charge you some small copays. So the copays can be dependent on your income, but that's all right. It doesn't matter. It's certainly going to be cheaper than buying those expensive medications somewhere else. They do mental health care. There are a lot of our veterans from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam who are aging now, who have suffered from mental illnesses their whole life since their wartime service. So if that covers you or someone you know, please get them over to the VA and tell them you need to go be seen. They will see you. And just for our seniors here, they no longer call it shell shock. They call it post-traumatic stress disorder. But nevertheless, those who suffered, who were diagnosed with shell shock and during World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, it's the same thing as what they're calling today the post-traumatic stress disorder. Alrighty. So let's get into, and then like I say on page 10, it talks about how to get enrolled in the hospital. It's very easy. You just get the form 1010. You can get it from me tonight. If you're computer savvy, you can get it off the internet, download it and print it. You can get it from your staff here because they have a copy in their binder, or you could actually go to a VA hospital and get it. And to apply, I recommend you just simply fill out the form, get your proof of service. They call it now a DD-214. Back in World War II, Korea, they called it a discharge form, your discharge papers. If you have that, you just take the application and the discharge papers to a VA hospital. Don't go to the clinics, you need to go to a hospital, and they'll go ahead and you see an enrollment person, they'll enroll you, they'll put you in the system, and then you're in. And then from then on, you can use all 3 divisions of the VA because your records will be with them. Because believe it or not, the VA doesn't know about all our veterans. They don't know all who served. To give you an example of why, even though they went automated in 2000, in 1977 and in 1990, there were fires in our National Personnel Record Centers. So some of the records were burned in 1977 and some were burned in 1990. So those who didn't save theirs may have trouble obtaining them, but if you have it, and if you have trouble obtaining it, after this I can tell you how to get them. There's a way to go around and getting your proof of service. So let's get on to the Veteran Benefit Administration, because that's what I want to spend most of my time on. This is where I think it will be most beneficial to you folks here. All right, so there are basically 2 kinds of pensions. There's a disability compensation pension, and then of course there's, in that disability, it has some presumptive illnesses that automatically qualify you for it, presumptive conditions that automatically apply to you. Okay, that started on page 11, sir. And it talks about PTSD is one, or shell shock, the post-traumatic stress disorder. That's almost an automatic eligibility for a pension, because if it's related to your service, because there are service-related pension benefits, and then there's non-service related. So PTSD from your service would be related, an injury, a war injury you received. By the way, is anybody in this room, were you ever injured and receive a very small pension from the VA, maybe a 5%? Do you have a 5%, sir, or 10%?
I started off with that, I have 30%.
You're at 30% now? All right.
100%.
You should be, all right, because by the time you reach approximately your age, you should have been upgraded to 100%. There are a lot of veterans out there that are still at 10%, and they should have been upgraded a long time ago. A VA doctor can do that. So if you know anyone who has a 5 or 10 or 15 or 20% rating for a disability pension from the VA, and they're over the age of 70, they need to go see a doctor and get upgraded to 100%, because by now they've lived a life of many, many years, could be 40, 50, 60 years, with that condition that caused them to age more. And anyway, it's one of the things that the VA does, but you have to ask for it. Yes, sir.
My son-in-law was in the Vietnam War, stepped on a line, and he's getting a 50%. But you say when he becomes 70 years old, he'll get 100%?
He should. Well, let me ask you a question. He served in Vietnam, on the ground in Vietnam? Okay.
He's got Agent Orange, too.
So, this is perfect, because this is one of the things I was talking about, so I can work around my presentation. Okay, so I want you to understand something very important. If he served in Vietnam and he has any of the conditions that would be linked to Agent Orange, he's eligible for 100% disability now. He has to go to see a VA doctor.
He lives in Reno, and he goes to the Reno VA up there.
Sure, and his doctor probably does his paperwork and sends him out. What I tell people to do, and I don't mean this literally, but I want you to think of this figuratively. I tell them to shut the door in the room with the doctor and don't let the doctor leave the room until they sign off on 100%. Because the truth of the matter is, they're not going to do it unless they're pressured. Because, okay, I don't want to say I know this, but they're incented not to do that, because if everybody got 100% disability, the VA would be bankrupt. So they're always trying to find ways of not signing that. But someone who has Agent Orange, it's automatic. They have to ask for it. Or if they served in Vietnam and have anything on the list of presumptive illnesses, and type 2 diabetes now is considered a presumptive illness from serving in Vietnam, considered an Agent Orange type related condition, it's 100%. But they have to go ask for it, and and you tell him he's got to push. He's got to tell the doctor, you're doing this for me. And I'm sure his medical records will substantiate it, because that's what they use to verify it.
Yeah. Well, they send him down here to the University of California once or twice a year because he lost an eye because of Agent Orange. So he's got a pretty good case.
He's got a great case, and I think, and he doesn't need a lawyer, by the way. I mean, he could use an advocate. He could get someone from the American Legion or a county veteran service officer to help him, to arm him with the conversation pieces he'd need to make the point. But truly, and at the end of the day, it's a VA doctor that has to sign off on it. So, very good. I should talk about that, but I'm glad we brought that up, because that's important to understand. And here's, these pensions were designed to compensate our veterans for their service. Because, and look at the kids today. I call them kids. I'm 49, I'm calling them kids. The people who served after me, they're coming back with no arms, no legs, no eyes. They're surviving every possible calamity that can happen to them. And they need to be protected. They need to be taken care of, the ones who can't care for themselves. And that was supposed to be what this was for our World War I and our World War II veterans, our Korea veterans, our Vietnam veterans. These pensions were designed to help financially when the veteran could no longer take care of themselves. But the VA kind of got soft on handling that. So you have to ask for it, is what I'm saying. That's the bottom line. So former prisoners of war, we talked about Agent Orange, Gulf War veterans, that may not apply to anyone here, but I do want to say to you, as time goes on, you're going to start seeing more younger veterans coming to places like this, because they're going to be aging more, because they have so many conditions that they can no longer care for themselves. And if they can't afford a private nurse, if they're going to be paying rent, I mean, I don't know how that, I think the assisted living facilities are going to change a little as time goes on. This is just a prediction, I don't know that. I think they're going to change and start accepting younger people, because our veterans are going to have nowhere to go. They're going to have no one to take care of them, and they're not going to be able to care for themselves. And if they're paying rent somewhere, they might as well be somewhere where they'll be assisted. So that's just a thought. Getting back to this though. Let's talk about, okay, so there's disability pensions for those who served and were injured in combat. Now here's another one that may be of interest to you. Let's talk about you're over, say 67 is the year, but I always say 70, and you're starting to have difficulties with what they call your 5 activities of daily living. That would be getting yourself out of bed and getting in a chair. They call it transferring, feeding yourself, clothing yourself, being able to move around, and taking care of yourself where you don't need assistance. That's one of the criteria for what I'm about to talk about. And it's called, this one's called an aid in attendance pension. It's still considered a compensation pension, but they use the words aid in attendance because you're not suffering from a war injury, but you now need assistance. You now need assistance with your activities of daily living. That, coupled with income, will qualify you. And let's talk about the income, because this is where a lot of people get confused. The Veterans Administration draws these magic lines when it comes to the numbers. The first number they start with is $80,000 a year. They presume that if you make $80,000 or less, you may qualify. If you make more than $80,000 in cash, IRAs, if you have supplemental income, annuities, bonds, anything that's paying revenue, Social Security, retirement plans, all that, they use $80,000 as the beginning number. People who make over that may not qualify according to the VA. But the truth of the matter is, in some places where our veterans are living, just their annual rent alone could eat up that number all by itself. So what they really want to know is the bottom number. They want to know if at the end of the day, after all your expenses, after everything you pay for your housing, your assistance in your housing, your medications, anything related to your health care, if it drops you below $40,000 a year, on net, after all expenses, including cash and assets that you have available to you, then you could qualify for something called an aid and attendance pension. That's the one that I think a lot of veterans are overlooking. That's the one, if in my interview he asked me, is there any gravy on the table? That's the gravy that's on the table. A lot of our veterans don't know about that one. That actually, I don't have that aid and attendance listed because if you go to a veterans brochure, Veterans Administration brochure, and you ask them what aid and attendance is, they'll tell you it, but it's not written down. They call it a compensation pension. But there are categories. So what I'm saying, there's the one that when you're injured, and then the other one is when you need assistance at the end, as you get older, and if you have a financial need and you have a physical need, you could qualify for an aid and attendance pension. But it still falls under the compensation pension. It's the same form. You fill it out the same way. The only thing is instead of writing war injuries, you write down that you're living in an assisted living facility and these are your expenses.
Do you have that form here?
Yes, sir, I do. I promise you I got it. So that's really the big one. And of course the compensation for your war injuries. Now, a lot of people say, well, what is a war injury? I was recently told by a service officer I should put in a claim, so I did. My nose was broken when I was in basic training, and I received stitches. And what happened is I have sleep apnea now, and I had to have corrective surgery. My nose had to be corrected. So they're saying that, well, if you had surgery to correct your nose and you were injured in basic training, you qualify for a pension. So whether I'm going to get it or not, I don't know, but I have submitted the application. And I'll get a rating and a percentage. And that's what people need to understand is that just apply. So if you feel that you have something that happened to you during your service, and we can have a discussion later, and you think it might qualify you, even at this point, even if it's been this many years, you may still qualify for that based upon war service or military service. And then again, the other one is based upon needs through activities of daily living and financial. That's called aid and attendance. And then the third pension, I think that's way overlooked, and this is not only for the ladies in the room because some men qualify, but the survivor spouse pension. This is the pension that when the veteran, when they pass away, whether it's a man or a woman, because we do have ladies who served and their husbands who did not, but when either one serves and they pass away, and then when the income's, it's adjusted because you lose some of your income from your spouse, you choose which Social Security check you're going to pick. They let you do that. And then at the end of the day, when you figure out how much money you have, you may not have the amount of money you need to live. And if that is the case, and again, it's the same magic number, $40,000 a year. If you have less than $40,000 a year, at the end of the day, after all your living expenses as a survivor spouse, you could qualify for a survivor spouse pension. It's based on financial need only. This is the one that a lot of folks miss. This is the other piece of gravy that's on the table that a lot of our wives, our survivor spouses, and husbands are missing out on because they're struggling to pay their bills, they're struggling to eat. They go to the VA, the VA says, there's nothing we could do. They go to social programs, they give them some food, the food bank and all that, but at the end of the day, they still have a financial need. Well, if you served in our armed forces of our country and you have a person you left behind and they have a financial need, the government will help them if you ask for it. And this is one of the programs. This is for veterans and survivor spouses, these pensions. But again, this is the one that's left on the table. And I have that application here tonight too. So if anybody thinks they even maybe qualify, I can go ahead and give you the application form and I can show you how to submit it and you can see what happens.
How much are they qualified for?
Okay, very good. I never give anyone a number, but if you won't hold me to the numbers, because it's a sliding scale of need for both pensions. The number applies to both. Well, actually, for these combat or military related or aid and attendance pension, it could be $900 to $1,800 a month. And that's sliding scale on how much the need is, because you may qualify for the lower amount or you may qualify for the higher amount. Survivor spouses, it starts around $900 and goes to $1,800. But then it could go more. If the veteran was 100% disabled, in the case of you, sir, and you left a wife behind, she would qualify for a higher amount because of your 100% service-connected disability, because she's going to receive part of what you got plus her survivor spouse.
Now, what if she died?
What?
What if my wife died?
And then you're still around?
Right.
Well, then she couldn't qualify for it. You have to, the surviving spouse has to be a surviving spouse, and the veteran in question has to have passed away to qualify for that particular pension. That's a separate one from all the others.